Good to be the king. How's it going, everybody? Uh, wife looked over at me like, "What the hell are you doing, Ghoul?" While recording this. Very fun, but no. So this weekend was the Adelaide Materia Cup, and uh, I won actually, which was really awesome. Let me go ahead and switch this over. I know people generally like looking at images over the list of cards. I'll flip back and forth because I like looking at numbers. It's easier for me to see that than the actual card images, but we'll bounce back and forth. But yeah, 20-person Materia Cup. Most of the best names in Australia, though. It was a very small field for a Materia Cup, but it was still like I would say a majority of that tourney was there with like the desire and the potential to win the tourney. It was a very strong room, and I came out on top. And the deck that I took was refia control. It's very similar to the list that I played last set, and I had a lot of reasons for this. Let's go kind of through the deck, kind of bit by bit. So the forwards, once again, refia control plays a very small package of forwards. The main core is completely the same: 3 refia, 3 warrior of light, 3 Ferris. I've always been a 2 Zidane believer. I know that puts me in the majority of non-Japanese players, but I really don't think that Zidane... I think Zidane is... The truth on Zidane is that it's better than my joking attitude for it, but not so good that I think 3 copies is warranted in a deck like this. The 1 copy of Bosch just to both guarantee damage 3 access for the Ferris and the Arc, as well as meaning that 2 backups plus a Tyro is 3 backups, including almost guaranteed 2 Warriors of Light. The only way it couldn't be is if you get like a shantotto. The main difference here is I previously was on 1 copy of Golbez, the Wind Lightning Golbez, with the idea being that if you burst with Tyro, you could get Golbez, which then was Cloud, but it was also just the best burst and also padded the wind count for King Tycoon. I still think that the card is totally like reasonable to play here. It actually even like I cast it a lot, which was the thing that most surprised me about the card. But instead, I made that the Une slot. Une just gives you really good inevitability. I didn't cast it at all on the weekend, but especially with the higher summon focus in the deck, I thought that like not having Une in the deck would have just been a mistake. And then I cut the fire, water, Ferris entirely. That means that the deck's going to be a little more awkward and led to some other changes elsewhere. But the 2 slots that Une previously had now went to Terra. I think Terra's speed made up for the lack of a win condition that Une provided. Because Terra does something on entry and gets you the summon back immediately, you feel so far ahead. You have the burst in the corner, which is really important. Your opponent has to play in very strange ways to get around Terra. They can't miss Dragon to stop the Terra from working. They can't Amaterasu the Terra. It's just a really strong card in this list. And yeah, I bumped the summons. I think I was on like 2 Miss Dragons, 2 Lev 6s previously. Everything went to 3. The goal of the deck was to be as interactive as possible and never let my opponent do anything for free. It's very much, I'm not going to say like a draw go deck that you would, because I think that has very different implications, but the idea was that almost no matter what my opponent was doing, I had a way to interact with them on their turn. When I say it's a control deck, it is very much a heavy control deck. Backups, these are relatively standard. The 3rd Sarah FFL came out. It's just a little harder to make this card work without the Firewater Ferris. And one of the big mistakes people make especially when they go from the Bart's variant to this one, is that Sarah FFL is not the full combo by herself. She does not do really much beyond getting you a backup and thinning the deck, which you don't even necessarily want. A lot of times you want your Warriors of Light in deck so you can draw them later. It is nice that you can search double. Like a lot of times, she'll just search double Warrior of Light to guarantee you can play your King Tycoon. Um, Usually, if you already have a Warrior of Light in hand, you search a copy of Ferris. There was one game in Top Cut where my opponent just was not damaging me, so I searched for Arc and Warrior of Light, just getting the Arc out of the deck so I could draw more alive. Ideally, Shantotto wouldn't have to be in the list at all, but I wanted to make sure that in Top Cut, if I was against an aggressive opponent, they could not just go 5 forwards and pass. I think the one copy of Shantotto gives your opponent just enough pause that it helps. It was a Top Cut decision more so than I think Shantotto needs to be in the deck. Still did really well, still liked the card on the weekend, but not obviously the most important. For the limit breaks, things just moved around here a lot. Once again, I always like to think about limit breaks as quote-unquote modes. So what are the different modes that the deck does? The first mode, obviously, is you just Shantotto. You need the board wipe, you Shantotto, your limit break is done for the game. The other most common mode actually is double Lunafreya plus Leo or Sid Highwind. This deck is on 25 bursts. I figure that with the current format, with all the decks running around, I needed to have as much chance to survive against aggression as possible. That's why I'm on this build as opposed to the Bart's build. And Lunafreya is very good at abusing the extra 25 bursts in the deck. More so than any other card. Even you hit like a King Tycoon is absurdly strong, for instance. Hitting the Lev 6, even something like a Cullen or a Kusith or a Lena really is nice. Alternatively, you could always replace one of the Lenas with either a Cloud or a Noctis. I think Cloud came up a couple times. I think it's really necessary with Witch in the format to make sure you have an easy out to Witch. One of the big issues with this deck is the high density of 7Ks. I actually unironically considered running a copy of Sarah in the list, the one that buffs your Warrior of Lights by 1,000, as a way of dealing with Witch of the Fens, or like a Kalmia. But they're not searchable in the deck at all, so it would just be like when you draw it in one specific matchup, it's good. I didn't trust that. So instead, the goal was you would either cloud it so that they would just lose the Witch, and hopefully you're ahead after that. Or something that people don't realize is that you can Amaterasu Witch on entry, kind of force them to use Witch then and there if they wanted to. Then you kind of trade even for even, but Amaterasu is a lot more easy for you to recur than Witch is for a water player or a monster player. Lastly, we have one copy of Tidus, with the idea being that you can go like Leo, Sid Highwind, and Tidus in matchups that you don't need the Lunafreya. Alternatively, even just Tidus plus Lunafreya is usually worth it if you have to go for that route. It's not the most efficient way of using the LB deck, but there's not really, like, all of the other cards in the LB deck are super critical. Maybe with the exception, like, you could make Noctis a second Leo to make your Tidus is a little less awkward sometimes. But even there, I'm not sure I would go for a second Leo over a second Cloud, for example. It's a very simple take on the deck, but I wanted that for the event. So my thought process going in was, I think probably the best deck in the game is either Mono Earth, or I actually think it could still be Refia. I think Refia is still very underexplored. I don't think the deck is any weaker, and I think the ways that Refia plays are still very strong. I think the only bad matchup for Refia as a deck is maybe Mono Earth. And even that's like, there are ways of playing around what Mono Earth is doing in a way that is good. You have to just be very careful about your resources. The most common thing that I say is you need to win the Mist Dragon Wars. There's kind of this like thing that happens in Mono Earth games where both players use Mist Dragon to try to rip each other's break zone. If you can Misdragon their Misdragon and then get it back with something like a Terra or Une and then rip their break zone from under them, you're just kind of winning. So the third Misdragon, the two Terras mean that I'm in the three Cryals mean I'm pretty favored to win the Misdragon Wars, which was one of the goals of the deck. But I was pretty sure those were the two best decks in the format. And thinking about it more, I thought the most common decks at the tourney would be either Knights, Hythlodaeus, or Chaos. All of which I think are incredibly strong decks. But Australia is really taken to kind of a more aggro approach to the game for the most part. They really like aggro, which is funny because it didn't show in this tourney, I don't think, super well. But I knew that I wasn't going to let myself lose to that. So I'm on a deck with, again, the 25 bursts. And I thought Mono Earth, while it has the tools to survive against aggression, if the whole room was nothing but Chaos players, I actually think Mono Earth is not an amazing deck to be playing, because I actually think Mono Earth, or like the Chaos stuff, can play around what Mono Earth does. There's only, like, you make them discard 2, then they have to Shantotto, and then you get Gilgamesh and just kind of die, right? Sure, you can Misdragon in Mono Earth, but if they have a second special to punish you afterwards, like, it just seemed like a matchup that I thought would be better served by running a deck with 25 bursts and daring my opponent to actually try to interact with me on that axis, rather than my cards are strong enough to not do that. I don't like relying on bursts, but when you have 25 of them, it's almost impossible for them to not go to damage and just get incidental value from your opponent trying to kill you. And it happened a lot. There are recordings of all of my Top Cut matches. I ended up being in the recording setup for every single game. Just kind of worked out that way. They put me on for round 1. In round 2, one of the players would rather not play on streams, so they put me on again. And then obviously I was in finals, which is the last game. But you definitely see the strength of all the bursts in the deck. So I wanted the deck that had the best chance at dealing with Chaos, Hythlo, and Knights. And I actually thought this deck had a better chance against all of those than Mono Earth. In particular, I really liked how this interacted against Hythlo. I think that having access to 15 summons, all of which could, in theory, do something, versus the traditional Mono Earth, which is on 8 summons, one of which usually is used to break the Cleon lock, and then, like, maybe Misdragon or Titan. Like, didn't seem like it was a matchup that I was happy to play. And I thought this deck did pretty well into most other things. Again, the plan against Witch of the Fens is just to Amaterasu it, or you could Cullen it, and then you just refia spin it so you don't deal with it. I actually don't even mind if they use Witch, because one of the downsides of playing refia control is your engine is very big. This is one of the largest engines of any deck in the game. 3 Ferrises, 3 Refias, 3 Warriors of Light, 2 Arcs, 2 Lunas, 2 Inguses, 2 the Kryles, the Lenas. Like, I would say, like, almost all of the backups and over half of the forwards are just pure engine. And if you're on that engine, obviously you still want all the summons for interaction and things like that. It doesn't leave a lot of room to attack something like a Neo X Death. Neo X Death is obviously, like, it would be nice to have access to, but losing 2 backups for it is a really scary prospect in a deck that needs its backups to function. Even if you sacrifice a King Tycoon plus, like, a spare Kryl, you're still feeling the ramifications of the Neo X Death if you don't kill that turn. Might still need to come in, just given the way that the Australian meta has actually shaken out, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Yeah, so I chose Refia over Mono Earth because of the extra interaction. I chose this build over Bart's because I thought 25 bursts gave me a better chance to survive if my opponent went for the Chaos Turbo stuff, which ended up working out in my favor. I was undefeated against Chaos Turbo on the weekend, and I played it 3 times. Once in Swiss, and then I guess technically 1 round of Top Cut, which ended up being, obviously 2 games. It's a best of 3. And, I mean, I was nervous. I mean, I don't think that matchup is ever going to be one that you're not scared of a little bit. But I had a game plan going into that match that I was very happy with, and I felt like even if my game plan didn't happen the way I wanted to, I had a chance regardless. So let's go through Swiss. Round one, I played against Albert Monk, who was one of the players at the event that already had their nationals invite. He was on Mono Earth, and I don't really remember that much about how this game actually went. I kind of just got, I think we kind of went even, like we both ramped. I think I ramped slightly better. I got a little bit ahead, and then just never really gave Albert a chance to kind of get back into the game. Round two, I was up against. Actually, I have the Swiss standings right here. So I'm curious. Okay, yeah, Albert was X2 in Swiss. Round two was against a Category 13 aggro player. They overcommitted, and I hard drew shantotto. So I just shantottoed the field when they literally couldn't Amaterasu me, and then just kind of killed them over the next several turns. The one downside about this deck, and the one thing I don't like, I know that there are people that like find refia control really boring to pilot. I really enjoy it outside of the fact that when you get ahead sometimes, like the game is over like 3 turns ago, but you're physically not able to kill your opponent because your forward count is so low. And you can't like commit to like bad plays, like just like limit break Leo to make the game end faster. Like you just have to like slowly kill them over the course of like 7 turns, even though you won, 5 turns ago. It's a little bit frustrating when that happens. But it was one of those games. Yeah, just an early Shantotto, no recovery plan from my opponent, and once you establish kind of refia plus everything you need, that matchup is not particularly scary. My round 4 was against Dave Vickers, who fantastic person to talk to, by the way. Sit down. I know that he's on Chaos. His games have all been ending very quickly. I don't know what variant of Chaos, but I know to expect Chaos. I think I lose the die roll. He opts to go first. He goes for it. I have Mist Dragon in hand. Something interesting to note, actually. Most Chaos players in Portland, to my knowledge, were blinding second. And in Australia, they're all blinding first. And I actually think blinding second makes a lot of sense for this deck. The difference between, like, backup Chaos and, like, 2 Chaos specials is just completely over the top. As far as, like, what actually counterplays it. Like, the Mist Dragon in response to prevent the discard, too, is just no longer, like, good. You kind of start accidentally hand looping them at that point. But he goes for that. Trying to remember. I'm pretty sure I Mist Dragon the break zone. I go a couple backups, take a bit of damage. I get a couple bursts to help draw. Eventually, I establish the refia with the ability to spin the chaos. And we're kind of in one of those kind of like late game board states. I'm on damage like 5, I want to say, which really is pretty far away. And he kind of fans through his break zone, and then just like, because he moved his RFG pile in a different spot than I think he was used to, he just kind of picks up his deck and goes, "Oh, crap. Congrats on your win." Just kind of shakes my hand, calls the judge over, explains, "Hey, I'm going to scoop this game because I actually picked up my deck." We both agreed that really, like, with my hand and where I was at, there really just wasn't a way that he was ever going to come back. But just, like, being a good sport and just saying, yeah, I really don't see a way that I could have. Or, like, I don't want this to, like, be a question or anything like that. Just, like, game is yours. I think you had it anyway, but we'll both move on. And, obviously ended up making top cut anyway. Round 4, I played Justin. I got a little lucky here. I lose the die roll, and I keep like a decent hand. Justin mulligans, draws 5 more, goes You're kidding me. He goes, alright, fine, whatever. Discards 2 cards, plays Sid Highwind, reveals 3 more, and whiffs a backup on it. Which basically means he has no backups in his opener after a mulligan, saw none after the Sid, so he's gone now 14 cards deep without seeing not a single backup in 14 cards. He says, okay, fine, ditches his whole hand, plays Realm, and like just tries to draw 2 cards. I think it was like a Kalu plus a Blue Worm. And at this point, like, I'm in a pretty decent spot. I just have to like get my little setup going, and I probably win the game, which I do. Again, it's one of those games like I feel bad that like again I have to apologize while I'm playing. I'm like, I'm sorry. I want to end the game faster so that you don't like deal with the ramifications of an opening hand where you go mulligan no backups into a Sid Highwind for no backups. I just have to play the way the deck plays, which is going to take an extra 3 turns to kill you on what any other deck in the game would be doing. Again, Refia Control is one of the slowest decks in the game at actually ending the game, unfortunately. This win of 4-0, I'm guaranteed top cut. I feel pretty good. Go into my final round, at which I am playing Daniel Coombs, who is playing probably the worst matchup for me in the entire room, with this pile, is what I'm going to call it. It's a tricolor monsters deck with 3 different elements, and this deck plays on an axis that Refia Control is not equipped to handle. You look at the forward count. It's tiny, doesn't exist. In fact, the forwards in the deck, of the 8 forwards, not counting the limit breaks, Mira just is never on the actual field. If I ever try to target her with something like a Refia, she goes right to the break zone. And this is actually like really important because now I almost don't even get targets for Refia to spin if Daniel decides to correctly correct Mira, and because Mira sacrifices herself as cost, if he decides to sacrifice Mira, I can't, in response, say Refia spin so that I get the draw. I need to be very careful and very cognizant about when I do that. I also like know very quickly that I need to hold my limit break for Shantotto LB. This is really annoying though because even though I'm on, 18 backups, I can't pull cards from my LB deck to help me get to them. I can't Luna Freya to dig for King Tycoon, for instance. And I just kind of stall. I don't really get anywhere quickly. And I end up in a situation where I have to Shantotto LB, but I went for a Mist Dragon to stop Summer Recursion that he went for. I want to say it was like a zombie going for a Mira. And then he Mist Dragons, and then I Mist Dragon a second time. But the problem is now I've discarded 3 Earth cards to stop him from doing that. I get my field wiped the next turn, including an Une that I was counting on to kind of get these Mist Dragons back over and over again. And I no longer have a way of Shantotto LBing to put myself in a position to win the game anymore. Just a really greedy play by me that I had no reason to go for. I should have just let him do his thing, Shantotto LB, and move on. And this play loses me the game. And again, that's the tricky thing about these matchups is because I have so few ways to interact, my interactions need to be on point. Otherwise, I will lose the game on the spot for making just a slightly wrong decision. But I'm generally, I feel pretty good. I stalled out a little bit in that matchup. But it's a bad matchup. I don't have great ways of interacting with monsters. We move on to top cut, at which point I get paired against my testing partner and good friend, Alex Wells. These matches are all on stream. He would say that these matchups he got steamrolled. I don't think it was quite as bad as Alex says it was. He made a couple of big mistakes, but he made them at points where I was very far ahead to begin with. Like he tried to Lev 6 to bounce a refia to hand before I went to combat, and it's like I'll tap my last backup, ditch a card in hand, and play the refia back to the field. But and then like there was another time where like I had a Cullen in hand, and then he goes for T to LB, gets Cullen, and goes, oh crap, okay. And then he does it again, and then gets Cullen again, and it's like, ah, you gotta be kidding me. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I know in the matchup that the moment you go for Tidus Warrior of Light, I have to be spinning or like doing something to cut the Leo off. But even there, like I mean, I guess like Cullen is the easiest answer, but you know he's still got 3 forwards on field that are all very large and you know can be problems for the Refia deck to deal with. Um, kind of ends up stalling out, doesn't draw you know stuff like Shadow Lord or Neo Extra at the right time. I take it 2-0. So I make it to top 4, at which point I'm already feeling pretty happy and pretty good. I have now gotten my Terramat, which I've wanted since Florida when Ryan Chen beat me in top 8 in a very close game against Mono Earth. And I am against Richie on Chaos. I think I'm favored in general against Chaos, but it is one of those matchups you can just lose or you can just win, and there's just not really a good in between. So my plan was going first, either hold a hand that has Mist Dragon in it, or dump for 3 backups and then just pass. It's a really common play you'll see Refia control decks do, where they'll like open, they'll go like Sarah FFL, search for a fire card and an earth card, play a Cryo, play a Lunith. You've got 3 colors now. Your opponent passes. If you top deck Refia, you kind of are in business against an aggro deck, right? But I open. I have like backup plus Mist Dragon in hand. I'm like, okay, cool. I can keep this. Go first. I play a Cryo. I don't show that I have a Mist Dragon in hand. I think I discard like Cryo Amaterasu. And then I pass. Richie goes like Chaos, and then what's Chaos special? Is it Flare? Yeah, Flare. He goes Flare. Mills 10 doesn't hit Fujin Raijin. And I go, okay, cool. I'm good. And then he goes, we're like, okay, Flare resolves, take the damage. And I hit Arc. And it's the only time Arc Burst has ever mattered because it activates the Cryo, and then I Mist Dragon on curve on the first turn. Chaos's double discard fizzles, and I get to work on setting up in a way that I don't die. I think I Mist Dragon's Breakstone like 3 or 4 times, so Gilgamesh was never a card that he was comfortable playing. I win that one. Game 2, I open my first hand. I look at it and go, this hand is great, but it's the wrong matchup for this hand. It was like Sarah FFL plus Lena. And I'm like, I'm going second. I need some form of instant speed interaction. And I mulligan. And I get Mist Dragon, like Tyro, Kusith. I'm like, well, it's a lot of Earth cards, a lot of interaction. I don't know how good this actually is. And Richie goes, Lufenian, pass. And I'm like, okay, that's strange, but I'm okay. My hand has no playable backups. Like I said, if it had anything, it was like a Tyro. I don't even think I had the Tyro, to be honest. I just go Leo, pass with 5 cards in hand. And Richie does probably the funniest thing I think anybody will ever do with Chaos, which is Spiritus, no effect. So the way this was described later is that both of our decks were just determined to derp as much as possible because we were both because like I was keeping an awkward hand or like playing awkward hands to make sure that I could interact with it. Like if you went for it, I had ways of dealing with it and nothing else. And Rishi's deck was not, was so bricked on dark cards. He legitimately could not go Spiritus, ditch, play Chaos from deck. I draw like a Lunith, like Ditch a Warrior of Light, play Lunith, and then he goes Chaos, Flare. I go Mist Dragon, Rue the Breakstone. He goes, okay, Mist Dragon resolves. Flare. I go, ditch 2, Mistraken. And apparently Richie could have flared a third time, but he had lost, I think, like 3 Fujins, 2 Raijins, and like 2 4-color Warriors of Light. He's worried that if he flared a third time, he actually would not have the cards left in deck to actually end the game. So he opts not to go for the third flare, which ends up being what I stabilize into that. End up establishing like with just the Lunith, I go like Arc, Revive Ferris, search for Refia, play the Refia, and I can start spinning forwards, and I'm kind of in a position where I really can't lose the game anymore. So I win that game against Richie, who, you know, obviously very good player. And I'm in the finals. And in the finals, I'm up against Daniel again, which is, I think, the worst matchup remaining in the pool for me. Because, again, my deck is not designed to interact with him at all. I get 1 Shantotto LB bullet. Once that bullet's gone, every single monster he plays stays there for the rest of the game. I literally like talked about it afterwards. I don't have a way to ever remove a Hippocampus if Daniel doesn't allow me to. The only way that I can, like, say the Hippocampus does a 7k cleave, I have to have Ferris plus 2 other Warriors of Light from Hippocampus to ever die to that. If I like Lev 6 it back to hand, he can just replay it. And he's gonna. I know he's also gonna be able to mirror stall me. I don't have a lot of great ways of pushing through that easily. So we play game 1, and I stall out a tiny bit. I don't really get my cards in order. I'm missing just like a couple backups. I run out of steam after the Shantotto LB, and I get OTK'd. So then I go to game 2, and I'm like, all right, come on, you got this. It had been a really long break. Daniel had been playing with like top cut was untimed, which I don't really agree with as a decision. I think that probably in the future we should time top cut. The rules state it's supposed to be 70 minutes or 75 minutes or whatever it is. Even 90, I think, is probably just not a bad idea. I know that like it sucks for decks like this, but I think it's just probably like a better thing for the game in general. I mulligan my first hand, and my second hand has Tyro, Lunith, and 4 Earth cards. So I can't play the Lunith. I don't have a Warrior of Light. And this is one of the worst hands I could have had. I need my Earth cards to still be in the deck because I need a Shantotto late to do it. And I can't just go Lunith into Tyro, which is fine. Later on, we actually get to, you know, Batisky walks over and goes, oh wow, Lunith Tyro, that's like a classic, you know, turn 2 where you get 1 back up into a Tyro. And I'm like, I had to like close my eyes and do this, and I just go, Chris, shut the hell up. I go like, Chris, please, like, it's like, he looks at my breaks and realizes there's 4 cards there and goes, oh, my bad. I'm like, yeah, I know, no kidding. Especially when like I had to overpay to get the Lunith into play because I still didn't draw a fire card on the next turn. Yeah, it was a mess. It was a very funny moment though. But what does happen this game is I managed to stick Warrior of Light and Zidane. And the other thing is that I remember, this is a big tit for anybody playing against a deck like this. Mirror does not make the monster unbreakable. It gives it the text, cannot be broken. So you can Cucullin the monster that gets the ability from Mirror once they declare the block, and it will die. And I did not remember this until game 2. I'd known about it, but like I haven't played against a Mira deck in a long time. It was just so hard to play this with knights everywhere. Even like the ability to stall out just was not enough. And I get into the situation of, okay, preserve every copy of Warrior of Light, every copy of Zidane, and every copy of Cucullin. Those are going to be the cards that win me in this matchup. And I barely get there in game 2. Game 3, I open pretty but again, the other annoying thing is, again, I know that the Shantotto LB matters. So I can't, like, I don't think a Sid Highwind to accelerate my game plan in exchange for never having access to Shantotto LB will ever be worth it for me. Even though at one point in game three I was actually like pretty far ahead. If you watch the VOD, I discard a lot to hand size. And there were multiple points where I was like, well, if I just go for Luna Freya, maybe I can go fast enough to just end the game and not worry about it. But I stick to the game plan, and I end up just barely getting there as Daniel decks himself out. And yeah, I was the Adelaide Materia Cup champion. It was a fantastic event. It was so much fun seeing everybody again, playing some great games. Day two, I played Mono Lightning Scions. I was ninth after Swiss and missed cut. Both of my losses were 4-1, so I'm very happy for both of them. They both got, in top cut. I think both of them didn't have great day ones either. So to see people have good day twos after at a regional and not have a great day one makes me pretty happy to see that. So I was okay with it. And I was pretty happy with my play for the most part. Just kind of those matchups, I just did not draw the right cards at the right time, which that's the card game. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.